All right, welcome to our 9/11 24th anniversary stream. I'm here with my friend Wittmeyer, and we have, I think, the distinction of being perhaps the only two people who really have taken a skeptical perspective on one of our topics today, which will be the whole dancing Israelis narrative of 9/11. And I am also writing an upcoming book regarding other that it disconnected. Okay, we should be back online. Um, Sorry about that. Um, Whitmire, first let's talk about that topic that is burning up all of the internet. Charlie Kirk was assassinated yesterday in Utah, and the suspect is still at large. What are your impressions about it? Was there any significance for Charlie Kirk to you? We actually haven't talked about this that much, but go ahead.
I don't know. He's obviously a really important figure on the political right, especially online. And it was only like an hour or two after it had happened that I, of course, opened social media and saw the actual up close footage of him getting shot in the neck and bleeding out, and it genuinely shook me up for a couple hours. I had to get over that. It's a pretty horrific video. Um, it's obviously the topic du jour, and especially hot off the heels of the Ukrainian woman. I mean, I think she was killed about a month ago, but the video came out recently, and then the full video was released. I think the day or maybe a day or two before this unfortunate shooting, and so of course everyone on the right is really activated by this. Let's say.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think one of the big things that is happening right now is that there's this tug of war between those who want to already attribute blame for his murder and those who are willing to, kind of wait for the story to come in. It is appropriate. I mean, it's definitely terrible, but it's appropriate that this type of response, I think, parallels the rest of our topic today, which is how sensationalism just carries tragedy. One second, it's disconnecting. I hope this isn't like this the whole night, but okay, we're back.
Well, your screen does kind of freeze up sometimes. I guess your connection might not be the best, but
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to help it because I have. It's probably because
yep.
there's too much stuff running. Um. Anyway, you have national tragedy, and the first people. It's not. It's not direct at all, but there were two events at my alma mater that I went to that were organized by Turning Points. One of them was with the director of Gun Owners of America, and then the other one was with Brandon Tatum, who's another internet um, conservative personality. And those would have been unheard of before Turning Point became active on campus. So certainly he's changed the landscape of conversations on campuses. And I think with the way he was killed, reconnecting, I'm back. So based on who was elected, people thought it would be a free speech presidency, but I think there are certainly issues with freedom of speech, even if it's speech that I disagree that the with that the administration is violating, and then there's also this event which might discourage free speech because of fear. Um, so let's get into 9/11 itself, because with all due respect to Charlie Kirk, I'm just pausing whenever it says a disconnect, so I apologize. Okay.
Okay.
Um, so there was no notice at work. Nobody really was talking about it at work. People were talking more about their fantasy football, or there were people that were talking about um, I guess some of their vacation plans, and really the conversation about 9/11 has become virtually non-existent in apart from the work I do in my life. People don't really pay attention to it. I've brought up the topic to people, and their eyes glaze over, like they don't even want to hear about it. especially if we're talking about the topic that we're going to get into, which is dancing Israelis, because my personal feeling is that it's cheapened the whole issue. Like 9/11 was, I mean, it did happen, and so many of us, especially in my generation, witnessed it in school, and yet it's basically like the 9/11 truth movement, in my opinion, took it and turned it into some trashy, like pro wrestling narrative, and they came up with their own absurd theories. Some of them more ridiculous than what we're going to discuss. How about you? How was your 9/11? You know, aside from what happened with Charlie Kirk, which may have overshadowed it. Hello.
Yeah, you mean today, the 24th anniversary?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, personally, I've been a little busy. I didn't do anything by way of commemoration, I suppose. It really, I guess I was talking to you about this earlier, but I mean, his shooting really, even if you open up social media, there's a lot less um, conspiracizing. I'm not sure the correct verb to use there, but a lot less dancing
Speculation.
Israelis posting and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, because it had to happen on September 10th. I mean, of course, a lot of it gets wrapped up and blended together. You know how, as well as I do, sort of the ideations of these people. In that, Charlie Kirk, of course, was murdered by Israel. He was murdered by some sort of Mossad hitman or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Posts like that have been getting 70,000, 50,000 likes on Twitter, going viral. I don't know how much of that, how much you can sort of extrapolate from that, since that sort of happens with every shooting. And I'm sure the good majority of the people who like posts like that, engage with posts like that, don't actually believe that kind of stuff themselves, since there's no evidence for it. They just do it to hop on the bandwagon and sort of add fuel to the fire in whatever way they can. But yeah, it's things are getting crazier out there, I guess, in real life and online.
Yeah. I think the crazy thing for me is that I actually responded to the director of the Ron Paul Institute, Daniel McAdams. And
Hmm.
I don't think he remembers me, but I was in an argument with him maybe like a year and a half ago too. This guy has lost his mind, and you know, he came out with, you know, what's now become like the boilerplate, which is only one, you know, who benefits, what is, you know, who
Yeah,
else would have
cui
really,
bono.
yeah, the cui bono,
Which
and
makes no sense in this case, because I mean, Charlie Kirk was uh, not just like a pro-Israel advocate, but he was known for sort of curating the younger generations and sort of helping them, and I guess facilitating a more pro-Israel direction, especially since the younger generations are particularly becoming disillusioned with America's support for Israel and the Jews and whatnot. So he played a particularly good role, at least from the Israeli and I guess the broadly Jewish perspective. And so to see him go is probably going to mean bad things in that sense in the future.
well, what he wrote. Let me see if I can pull it up. Um, so I'll I'll have to go through my notifications, but this was utterly insane. And remember, this guy has been for years. He's been the the go-to guy for
Right.
the access guy for Ron Paul. If people want to see him, I'll have to bring up this other window. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a luddite, but here the audience can see it. And sorry, I won't be able to share it with you. So Michael Tracy had written, the fact that so many people online instantly assume that Israel must have killed Charlie Kirk, which doesn't even make any sense, is just Israel derangement syndrome. I'm all for rational critique of Israel and U.S. foreign policy, but this is just paranoid knee-jerk derangement. So McAdams then quote tweeted him and said, Michael, I do not know who killed Kirk, but I do know this. There is clear evidence that Kirk was beginning to seriously question Israel and its actions in the weeks and months before his assassination. Look up the clips. You're a reporter. Excuse me. He is the
Yeah,
head
most
of.
of the clips are, of course, from like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
It's not all
there's
a recent
definitely
development.
clips where but of all the people that they would have murdered to I mean, but hold on, let me get. I mean, this will just keep getting more insane. Just wait for it. Believe me. So he says he is the head and face of an organization with massive influence in the exact demographic that is turning away from Israel. Conservatives under 40 have a look at both Pew and Gallup polls from the spring. Yada yada yada. Does Israel claim the right to assassinate anyone anywhere in the world that it deems a threat? Question mark. Openly. Period. Have they acted on that right consistently? Yes, including this week in Doha. Right. So he's comparing Charlie Kirk to exiled members of a designated terror group. And then he continues, is a Charlie Kirk who is no longer reflexively pro-Israel a threat to Israel's continued existence? I think we both know the answer. I don't know who did it, but to dismiss all of this and more out of hand strikes me as surprising for someone of your inquisitive mind. So then I answered here, um, is this how rational analysis is done? This is just as asinine as the whole Saddam tried to kill Bush Sr., so of course he would be linked to 9/11 garbage that neocons peddled. I'm sorry, man. Thanks to you and Ron Paul, I grew a skeptical perspective. Maybe you've lost that. So he answered me. I was surprised because I thought he'd blocked me. Um, and he says examining motive and means when a murder is committed is now beyond the pale, is betraying a skeptical perspective. Lots of cops are going to be shaking their heads if that's the case. So then I said this. I said, okay, include them, meaning Israel. Let's take a step back here. Was Charlie Kirk also hated by the radical left? Was he hated by the transgender crowd? Was he hated by the Groypers, feminists, radical Islamists, maybe a disgruntled ex-employee? All of those and more are motives. As far as means, anyone could have had that weapon. And really, it's a if it is the rifle that has been seen everywhere, then it's nothing sophisticated. Anybody could have it. Um, so
Yeah.
no, you're not just examining motive and means. You've jumped to a conclusion. Sure, Israel could have done it, but there is no reason to suspect them more than any of the others I listed. So then he responds, it was a professional hit, absolute perfect shot. No tranny is going to pull that off. So I had to stop there. I was like, okay, have a nice day, buddy. I couldn't believe that this guy was saying that it's and so he only addresses the transgender possibility, which I guess was also floated today. So I understand that, but that was the type of response I've seen. So I agree with you. It certainly overshadowed 9/11. Um,
Yeah, there certainly is some sort of like libertarian, Rothbardian to just full on schizophrenic pipeline. I'm not saying that of all of them, of course, but a lot of these guys tend to really go off the deep end. I mean, look, I haven't been following this guy's posts. Did he post about any other possibility? Like, did he post about
I don't think so.
potentially some disgruntled transgender person or something? Or was he just posting, like, is he just asking questions about Israel? Is that the only thing he posted
Yeah,
with
that's what
respect
he
to?
that's what he and that's what he does all the time now.
So the
So
insinuation is clear.
yeah,
And I mean, this is sort of what you get if you just already believe that Israel assassinated JFK and somehow got away with it for decades with multiple administrations. Israel pulled off the largest terrorist attack in human history and then completely got away with it. I mean, this is that kind of mentality. So, yeah, I mean, it's if we're talking about who killed Charlie Kirk, this is just not something that you should even engage with at this point. It's just not something that anyone who holds this kind of belief that clearly it was the Mossad or probably was the Mossad, it's just so fanciful that clearly this person is sub-rational and just there's only so much you could do in that sense. I don't know. Maybe this particular person is accomplished or otherwise quite intelligent, but it's completely ridiculous. It reminds me of like the episode in January 2024 when the whole mattress incident in New York, in Crown Heights, where the headquarters, I think,
yeah,
of the Hod movement is located. When there was that whole incident, I think one faction called the police because the Messianic Chabadniks were infiltrating their space, some sort of low level controversy like that, and immediately when the video started coming out, people started saying it was some sort of satanic ritual or something, and that was like hundreds of thousands of likes on social media. People will say whatever they want. This is not something that could really be engaged with too well. And I've over time, I've come to hold that view a lot more. That's sort of a default position where people look at people who hold all sorts of fringe beliefs and they say they can't be engaged with or something. I used to be less sympathetic to that, but I've become a lot more sympathetic to that kind of idea. The I guess the more I grow, so
Yeah, there's one more thing I'll say about him. It's that so I noticed this a
sure.
while ago. I forgot about it, but I just looked at his profile again. So he has in his profile sede vacante. So he's one of these
He's a set of accountist, yeah.
yeah, like these people who believe that none of the popes have been legitimate since I think
Vatican II, yeah.
Pius it's either Pius the 12th or who came after him. I think
I can't
Paul
remember
the
the exact one.
Sixth, whoever. Anyway, well, the last legitimate pope I think they believe was like in 1962 or something before the Vatican Second Council. So anyway, yeah, you're right. These are people that their entire life all they do is talk about um, this hidden like agenda that has guided the entire world. I mean, he did put over here, if you blame the Jews for Israel's crimes, you're an effing idiot. I don't know why I need to say this again and again, but Americans seem, so he's not completely lost his
Okay, yeah, yeah.
mind, but there, that other thread that I showed you is alarming. But anyway, so let's get into dancing Israelis. I want to put up an article. I remember you reaching out when you were writing this to me because I debated Ryan Dawson in 2019. It actually is close to the anniversary of when, a good anniversary of when me and my wife started dating. And I think I was pretty
Awesome.
nervous because I was already scheduled to debate him. I didn't know whether
Yeah.
to disclose to her that I engaged with 9/11 truth. So, so anyway, but yeah, go through. I mean, we've both dug into this. I actually, describe your process of investigating it.
Yeah, it's been well, I guess more than 2 years at this point. I published it on 9/11, right?
Right.
2023. And so it's a little blurry, but yeah, well, I just have a blog where I have sort of a dilettante hobby interest in questions of like Jewish history and a lot of anti-Semitic narratives and stuff that go around. And so this is obviously a big one that you see, the dancing Israelis. And I had some history at that point with Ryan Dawson. I had been in his in some of his group chats. I'd met some people who were close followers with him, and so I was already vaguely aware of what he was about. I'd never seen. I decided to see his uh, really vaunted documentary, The Empire Unmasked, for the
Hmm.
first time, and so I uh, I checked that out. I see the case that it makes for the dancing Israelis to see exactly what people are saying, and I just found it so error laden and just egregious on all counts, sloppy. I mean, the entire thing is really poorly produced. He said he made it in I think Windows Movie Maker,
Hmm.
but I don't care about the actual presentation. The content is just so not just sloppy but disingenuous and deceptive, and so I saw that and I started just reading everything I could. I of course read all the files, the police report, every article I could, and at the end of the piece, there's a an appendix of a bunch of materials, basically all the materials I read, um, in a chronological order, I think. Uh, and then I just compiled the article over time. I was able to sort of um, gain a clearer picture of what probably happened, and then how the conspiracy formed. And there are genuinely suspicious circumstances about it. I'm not going to pretend there aren't. I think some people might be a little too dismissive. Um, but like they did have suspicious behavior. There is certainly something there. There is an unknown intelligence connection. We'll talk about all these things. And of course, the owner flees to Israel. You can understand why the conspiracy crops up. But ultimately, when you look into it enough and when you read enough information about it, it's pretty clear what likely was going on here. And so I just decided to be as comprehensive as I could about that and put it into a blog form because really, as you said, like we're some of the only people who've looked into this stuff from the other side. And so there really wasn't any material by the time I decided to write about it, at least none that I could find. And so I saw your debate. I think I was referred to your debate by a Halsey, who was one of the moderators at the time,
Hmm.
and I was very impressed with that. And so I decided to incorporate some of that into the piece, and yeah, and that was 2 years ago. So
Yeah, I certainly, I had a similar experience getting to um, getting into the topic because the way I discovered it was in part due to this article by Whitney Webb,
Yeah.
who actually so I'll get to her in a second, but it was in Mint Press News, and I'd always read Mint Press News as kind of like this is a window into like the extreme pro terrorism left or whatever you want. The owner of it, Manar Mahawish, is like a very suspicious person. I think she got married recently, so I think her name is Manar Adli. But every single article about in there seems to have a pro Iran agenda, and so for me, um, investigating that first, I started to question that online, started to contend with people who believe in it, and then, at a certain point, people were saying, well, if you really want to know the person who knows all about this, they said, oh, you have to check out Ryan Dawson. He's the one who knows everything about this. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
and I did. And the more found out about him, the more I figured out that this is just a dishonest and um, just a shameless person. And he's only gotten worse over the years. So I think this is actually one second. Let me.
Well, he really is held up as like the go-to guy for 9/11, the guy who knows everything about 9/11. And I just wonder if any of those people who say those things like have actually seen his work. I mean, I understand his more recent documentaries have been more high quality,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I haven't. They're about like the Kennedy assassination, which of course Israel did as well. So I haven't paid too much attention to them. Regarding, yeah, I saw that article too, and I remember you mentioning that during the debate. Um, Very, very unimpressive. The entire thing is based on that one thread about the photographs appearing to show time still was based on a farce. It was based on something that just wasn't true. And she would know that if she had read the files, but of course she didn't. And so I haven't followed her work with regard to the Jeffrey Epstein saga. I really haven't followed that too much, but that's sort of the data I'm going off, and so I'm sure it's not much better.
Yeah, so it's an interesting connection between the two of them. In Whitney Webb's article, she cites Ryan Dawson, and yet,
Yeah.
so the one about 9/11 and the dancing Israelis. But of course, like you mentioned, she also became very deeply into this Epstein stuff. She released this book called, I think it was One
One
Nation
Nation
Under
Under Blackmail.
Blackmail. Yeah, it was, and I didn't want to buy the whole book because it will take forever to get through. So I listened to it on Audible, and I also
Well, it's two
found,
volumes, right? I think it's like 1,000 pages total, two
yeah, it
volumes.
took forever, but it was definitely. I'm not gonna say it was worth it, but it was definitely more worth it than reading through it because that would have taken forever. And then there were notes that so I'm not used to using audiobooks, but I
Yep.
definitely now see the utility of it because I saved probably a good 2.5 months of just sifting through it. And um, so first of all, so like you said, her whole premise about the 9/11 photographs is erroneous, and Ryan Dawson's is erroneous, but they're different because she believed that the photos were taken on September 10th, and he has an idiotic explanation for how they were tampered with to make them look like they were taken on September 10th, which is that when they were getting arrested, one of them fumbled with the camera and started reshooting the shots, which you can't do in a film camera, and it would have also overlaid the photos with a different image. So, what he was basically making up nonsense. But for those people that have no experience with film photography, which is most of the world that's been born since like 1995, almost nobody's used film cameras. I happen to have taken it in high school, film photography. I guess I'm a geezer now, but anyway, the point is that his explanation was closer to the truth because he acknowledged that the photos themselves weren't taken on September 10th. But then he had to concoct this nonsense explanation to Adam Green, the person who thinks that Christianity is a conspiracy that the Jews are using to control the world since the beginning. So he had to come up with that, and most people don't really read through this because if people are skeptical, they generally are not even paying attention to Ryan Dawson. But now there's so many people who are getting into this and they don't have that background, especially if we're talking about photography, to understand the bullshit when they're hearing it. Now Whitney Webb, once she started to gain traction as an Epstein researcher, Ryan Dawson started to accuse her. I mean, he never really liked her, even though she gave him the courtesy of citing him in his in her article from 2019. But he started to he's been accusing her of plagiarizing him for years. And even though I don't think Whitney Webb is a particularly strong journalist, I mean she definitely does a lot of work, but we both know the quality of it. Um, I see no indication that she stole his work. I think everything that he's saying is basically out of jealousy. And he's just a very vindictive person who,
He's extremely spiteful. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, like I mean, I think this whole space, the 9/11 space, is full of people like this. I think today I was thinking about the whole analogy people give that Gaza is the world's biggest concentration camp. Well, in my opinion, this part of maybe the whole 9/11 truth movement, to be honest with you, is like an open air um, insane asylum, right? There's no walls whatsoever. Like these are people that are just out there, and they're in society, and this is the way that they look at the world. And on the screen you can see this. This is from his own documentary where he went to the warehouse of Urban Moving Systems where the five dancing Israelis were working, and he flips the bird at this vacant business building, as if this is like a compelling um, part of. I mean, it just discredits you more that you can't behave professionally, let alone that the facts themselves don't pan out.
Yeah, I post some photos from that where he's with a group of people, I think two other people, and they're like flipping off the old warehouse company or movers company.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I got that from like his former buddy who gave them to me. It's like crabs in a bucket with you. It's a very strange world. Even like when Ian Carroll went on Joe
Hmm.
Rogan and started talking about the whole Epstein conspiracy, um, he cited heavily Whitney Webb's work, and then she immediately took to X and sort of made him apologize to her basically for getting things backwards and sort of misrepresenting her. And she said it would just be better if I went on the Joe Rogan. It's like you can never. He's promoting her work, and she still doesn't. Still is not happy with that at all. Yeah. It says I don't know too much about her, so I can't really judge the full integrity of her work. Maybe you're obviously a lot more acquainted with the
Yeah,
book she's written.
I think she I
But
think
certainly
she
when it comes to
does.
Ryan Dawson, I'm very familiar with these kinds of tactics.
I think of the people that are believers in this, um, Whitney Webb has more of a mainstream. Like there are more mainstream people that listen to Whitney Webb because, she's not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe in her private life it's different, but she's not a basket case like he is. Like he, I mean, look. I don't know if you'll be able
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
this, but I'll show this to the people at home. On his web page. One second. Um, oh, geez. I thought I had it up. Confirm form resubmission. Anyway, he has on his webpage merchandise with the Unabomber sketch. The famous one where he's wearing a hood. So he sells those, with the word
Yeah, he's been a fan of Ted Kaczynski for a long time. Yeah,
right, and we're not exact. Like I thought at first he was being ironic, or it was just some sort of yeah. This isn't the web page I was hoping to have up. Let me see. But
yeah, he's an idiosyncratic individual. I don't want to talk too much about him as a person or anything.
yeah, I mean, yes, it would be a little weird if we made the entire stream about him. I will say,
Like a
you know,
gossip stream or something. Yeah,
yeah, like one thing I'll give him credit where credit is. Um, I think he's turned this once very very fringe belief. Yeah, so Dawson has publicly said that he's a fan of Michael Collins Piper, who is one of the people who promoted this before he died in 2015. Michael Collins Piper is a writer well known for being, he was with the Institute for Historical Review, he was with its successor, the Barnes Review, um, which were both Holocaust revisionist outlets. He was a vicious, like very visceral and like Jew hater. Like you could, I mean, I don't use the word lightly because there are a lot of people that get painted as the word anti-Semitism gets thrown out a lot, but he wrote a book about I'm an
sure.
anti-Semite. He also, which I think that was the actual title of it, and he was always talking about how so and so within their movement was a plant for the Mossad or for the ADL or anything. And I think there were a couple cases where he happened to be correct because about the ADL because things like that do happen. But he was basically so obsessed with this that it was unhealthy. Like he ended up dying rather early. I think he was 55 because he was just a workhorse when it came to putting out this type of drivel. So he actually is. So you mentioned the JFK was killed by Israel theory. He wrote a whole book about that in '93 called Final Judgment, which is still an underground hit on the far right. He's put forward theories about. I mean, he promoted Christopher Berlin, another guy Ryan Dawson hates, but it's virtually the same type of belief system, except maybe a little less grounded in. I mean, when this was really hot in the 2000s, they were all the same. Nowadays, Ryan Dawson basically says his 9/11 grown-ups for grown-ups mantra is, I can't explain to you how it happened, but I can explain to you who did it, which is always Israel, always, and eventually he extends it to Jews in general. So um, it's a consistent way of thinking about the world. It's a consistent way of thinking about this event.
Yeah, yeah. No, with respect to Michael Collins Piper, I mean, he was the one who, and you know this as well as I do, he created the theory that the Mossad was behind the Kennedy assassination. He wasn't just a popularizer of it. It wouldn't exist without him, probably. Um, and yeah, I mean, I was looking through one of his like a collection of his essays or something, and it, you say you don't throw around the word Jew hater too liberally, and that's certainly wise. He did think that, or at least give credence to the theory that Jews were like literally Neanderthals. So he thought that like Jews descended from the Neanderthals or had like a higher component of Neanderthal DNA or something,
Yeah, I
Ashkenazi
didn't know
Jews
that.
specifically. And so that was like sort of his pet bizarre theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this was during one of the magazine that he was writing for, the newsletter he was writing for, whatever that one of the
Spotlight?
editions was all about this theory.
Was it the
It might
Spotlight
have been
or
that, I'm not
yeah?
sure.
He,
I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I mean, there was a whole like a podcast he did about it back in the day. And so that, I mean, that certainly is like a racial theory. He believed in the protocols of the Elders of Zion, that they were legitimate, or at least like heavily imply that they were legitimate.
he well,
Um,
I remember I used
he,
to listen to when I was researching him. I listened to his archived radio shows. I think I remember him saying that even if they're not factually true, they're accurate to reality. So that was, but
which is
basically
like the
saying
line they always say.
even if
Yeah.
it's a forgery, it's an accurate representation of the world. Um, the other thing that
I
I mean,
think that's what Henry Ford said when he used them in his. I mean, they say that, but they do believe that they're accurate. Henry Ford used the protocols heavily in the International Jew, of course, and so he was a believer in their authenticity, as was Hitler, as were a couple other people. But when it comes to the article I'm specifically referring to, he said like he had a buddy who like had access to some files which showed that like the Zionists, so they were like Zionist intellectuals or functionaries or something who were discussing the protocols as they were authentic or something.
mhm,
But he didn't have access to the files personally or something to that effect.
yeah,
And so he was very much convinced that they were real. That's just one of these uh, things. So I mean, he was certainly like basically as far as he, and so he was like a bona fide anti-Semite. It's just yeah.
yeah. There was one. I've disconnected again. 1 second. It'll reconnect.
How's the stream?
Yeah.
Is it going to show these disconnections in the stream?
It might. They might skip. I mean, it's just a.
Okay,
Yeah, but mostly it's been smooth for the past hour, or for the past 15
all right.
minutes. Um. So so anyway, there was a shooting at this Jewish community center in Seattle, and he basically was what like his reaction was, well, if the employees who were wounded are in the hospital and they can maybe think about maybe what Israel did that might have warranted somebody coming and shooting them. And the person who ended up being the shooter was he wasn't a Palestinian guy. He was a Pakistani American born in the United States.
Hmm.
So, which he didn't know yet, but this was a person who um, a lot of times he was bordering on inciting violence, and these
Not to
are.
mention like a
Yeah, go ahead.
completely deny the Holocaust and everything. That sort of goes without saying. Definitely bought into sort of all the narratives that you can buy into.
Yeah, so that's the inspiration behind a lot of this thinking, and behind Ryan Dawson has paid tribute to him on his the anniversary of his death, and said he knew the truth and everything. So I consider there to be a direct connection from you know because Piper himself also goes back to older older neo-Nazi and even pre-World War II Nazi sympathizer groups. There's like a whole succession in there, just a connection. So Ryan Dawson is continuing in the tradition, and he also has connections to people that worked with. I mean, he worked for Michael Rivero, who was a colleague of Michael Collins Piper. So they might have even crossed paths or spoken. So I'm not trying to do guilt by association, but Ryan Dawson has done it himself. Um, these are people
No, no,
who,
he did say that he met him at some point, and yeah, and I'm very familiar that he's very
okay,
fond of him, and they did
yeah,
personally meet at some point, to the best of my memory.
yeah. So it all makes sense to me. I mean, we should probably like talk offline about this some more because this is something where I do think that what's on the surface certainly isn't the representation of everything that is true, but it's not in the way these people think. Like they take stuff like what happened with these dancing Israelis and they conflate it with some grand conspiracy when in reality their own story is really a greater one of conspiracy. Not that I'm blaming them for causing any massive tragedy, but they all seem to just find each other and make the world more miserable. Um, I actually do have
Yeah, it
to.
would certainly be an interesting topic to write about, um, which I guess you are in your book,
Yeah, it will be covered, but there is some more background that you could probably help me with. Um,
because I do find Piper as a figure pretty interesting. He was certainly rhetorically and verbally gifted. Um, I mean his books are sort of strange to read. I have some of the PDFs, and they you sort of have to scroll through a lot of pages, and the font's kind of big. It's a little, but I mean, I don't know. He can make an argument. He's not a total crackpot who's sort of like, you know, uh, sort of schizobabbling his way through things. He yeah, so I'll just give him credit where credit's due, I guess.
Yeah, he was
And he
very
he certainly
very
did form
effective
like
and
the intellectual
very
foundation for a lot of this stuff. So
I also saw a C-SPAN debate that he was on where he was very savvy. Like it was
yeah, yeah.
he knew he could think on his feet too. So, you know, while I don't approve of anything that he's ever written, there's some intelligent there's a lot of intelligence behind it because I've listened to his book Judas Goats, and it just goes through you know episode after episode after episode, and he does bring receipts. Some of them obviously I don't necessarily take at face value. Um, anyway, I am going to have to wrap up pretty soon, unfortunately, because we have a family celebration that I have to get to. But I did want to ask: are there any other projects that you're doing? Okay, that maybe you want to promote. I know you did a very interesting one about Mary Fagan and the whole um, Leo Frank saga. I know that you've done ones on um, what was another one you did? You did one on the origin of the epithet kike. Uh, you know, you
That was,
you
yeah, that
touch.
was just etymological
I
stuff.
like having someone else who's willing to go after the taboos. So,
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
anything you want to kind of tease?
Um, nothing that's too. I hate to say it. Like one of the big flaws of I've sort of been. I guess I started that blog in like late 2022. Is I haven't been following the current events too closely, uh, which has really been to the I guess detriment of my viewership and my audience and everything. But so I would like to cover at some point, the Epstein saga, at least look into it, um, or the Kennedy assassination. Really interests me. I think the argument there, in both cases, in that as well as the sort of Israel did 9/11 stuff, as well as you could say in a way the Charlie Kirk shooting. This is all sort of it revolves around a cui bono about like who benefits, and then it sort of builds the theory and sort of makes up its own positive evidence sometimes. I think the cui bono for the Kennedy assassination is just it's a very interesting thing to look into. I'd like to cover that at some point. Um, it's just a lot of reading to do. Um, so I mean I'm releasing a post about the Talmud and Jewish rabbinical tradition shortly, but nothing really I'm teasing. Nothing really big in the works right now. I'm not sure if you've covered or if you want to cover. I was going to ask you actually the Kennedy assassination or Epstein or something like that. Or if you're doing
Yeah,
that yourself or anything.
I want to. It's gonna. I mean, it will have to wait, but it's definitely. And I would like. I think it would be a good idea to collaborate. And I've been looking for other people. People that do work like you do, like I do. There's another
Hmm.
guy. I think you know him, or you at least follow him. Crackpot History. That I think does good stuff. But he's been dealing with the Daryl Cooper stuff. There's just so much going on. It's like drinking from a fire hose, and I think we have to start talking about collaborating as more of a group of people that we're not like the ADL or like these other groups that are like saying, oh, this anti-Semitism is terrible, somebody better tell them to knock it off. I think we do have to go in depth and look at the details, like look under the hood and see if you know whether it's the timing chain that's broken or if it's the coolant is leaking from a gasket, right? Because you're not going to fix the car if you're just going to wag your finger at it. um, I don't know, I don't think it's the same situation here, but um, I would like
Yeah,
to cover those
yeah,
topics. I think it's a lot for individuals to do. I think it we I think we ought to at least talk about how to combine efforts on some of these things, or think about, like, because in actual academia, I don't work in academia. I work for I work in manufacturing. um, so they only want the data. They want what's really interesting for putting out the product and making sure that it works, and they're not interested necessarily but in academia itself, there's a lot of collaboration often, and at least people share information. So that's something I think would help. I think it's something that I've been wondering, where are there other people that do this type of work, including the type of stuff you do and the type of stuff that he does.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, it's really just it's been a casual thing. And so I think for the entire year of 2024, I made like 3 posts on the blog. It's not been too impressive. Um, but absolutely, there's certainly value in providing counter explanations for things, which is not really something that organizations like the ADL are interested in or seem to be interested in. Um, they're mostly interested in censorship or
Press
promoting the
releases.
IHRA definition, or working with law enforcement, or which is of course has its place and is valuable. Or I largely just like consoling anxious Jews is a lot of it. Um, and so they haven't really been interested in sort of actually providing responses to certain narratives that gain traction and popularity, which is not going to solve anything. I don't think if you debunk that Kennedy was assassinated by Israel, that's going to solve anti-Semitism or like reduce a big chunk of it. But it's still valuable. It still has its place, and I think that's certainly part of a broader strategy that one would hope that the broader Jewish community would adopt at some point. But certainly it has its value. Yeah, I think it would be very interesting if we collaborated for over the Kennedy assassination at some point, especially since we're just got done talking about Michael Collins Piper, the guy responsible for it.
I
Yeah,
have. You won't be able to. I think something happened with my camera, but I have in my hand. Have you ever heard of this author Gerald Posner?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was
So,
talking to him a little bit.
oh, you talked to him. So
It's
anyway,
just on Twitter a little bit. Yeah,
right? Yeah, I think he responded to one of my. He seems to be a decent guy. Um,
yeah.
I think that he's the person to emulate on this. He wrote this book called Case Closed about the JFK assassination. It is really amazing. Like, I think he would, obviously I don't totally disbelieve any conspiracy, but reading this book, it's like the most compelling case that Oswald was guilty. And he does it by actually citing these conspiracy theorists and saying, these people, they cite some of these documents and they leave out the evidence that would answer the questions that they pretend are not answered. So
Hmm.
I agree with you. I think there's value. If you believe that the truth matters, then there's value. If you only believe that this is about fighting Jew hatred, I'm sorry, but um, I believe it can't be eradicated. It's just a part of human nature. But I'll give you the last word because I do have to go. What do you think is going to be the outcome of this whole? I mean, it's hard to tell, but um, we have a year until the 25th anniversary. Do you think that this narrative only gets stronger, or do you think it's going to peter out?
You mean like the whole
The
9/11
dancing
trutherism and
Israelis, and yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, of course, it's only going to get stronger. I don't think at the end of the day there are psychological motivations behind these things. It's people aren't interested in the truth, at least not like on a mass level. I think that certainly the broader trend has been for years. I wouldn't go so far to say decades, but certainly many years at this point, increasing skepticism toward the American-Israel relationship, to say the least, but also just um, a way the I guess the thawing of sort of the post-war philo-Semitism. Now we're seeing the reintroduction of anti-Semitism into Western societies, I think more properly, including America. So of course, I mean, if that's the case, for a number of different reasons we don't have to get into, that's a whole other can of worms. Then yeah, people are just going to be repeating these things. Doesn't matter if they're debunked. Doesn't matter how absurd or ludicrous they are. Every shooter who comes out, every new shooter who shoots anyone of any significance is going to be called like an Israeli plant or something. And so that's just going to continue. It'll just be noise on social media. Some people will believe it. A lot of people just sort of feed into it because it fits their narrative. But
yeah,
yeah, that's how these things go.
opportunists,
Yeah,
right?
I was hoping we would talk about. I guess we could another time talk about the specifics of the dancing Israelis. Um, I might have to be for another time though.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again, both because of that and because there is a Tucker Carlson series coming out, which
Yeah.
I'm sure will be brilliant. And by brilliant, I mean batshit crazy. Um,
Well, we'll see
there's
what he does with it. I mean, I don't think he's
yeah,
going to talk about invisible planes or something, so
you never know. He said he was
you never
mauled by
know. You never
demons.
know. You have to, but yeah, we'll see.
Did you see that clip of him saying he was mauled by demons? Because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I
yeah. Okay, so
sometimes I think he's acting, and sometimes I think he believes it. You know. Anyway, we'll leave it at that.
yeah,
We
we'll leave it
definitely
at
have
that.
more to talk about. I hope to speak to you again and speak
Yeah,
to the audience again. But until next time, and yeah, we're going to continue these topics because yeah, the truth is important. 9/11 was important for this country and for all of us, for the world too. So everybody have a great night, and we'll see you next time.